Hello, my little chickadees. It is Marlon Egolf back again for a review of Return to Ravnica. This time we will be doing something. Blue cards. And we're starting it off with Aquos Steed, the cross between a seahorse and a regular horse. Now, is this card good? No, it is not. While this effect is pretty good, we might recall Saltfield Recluse from Planar Chaos in Time Spiral Block, and that effect was quite good. However, Saltfield Recluse cost less than this. It was a 1 white and 2 colorless, as you didn't have to pay mana. Just having to pay mana is such an issue with an effect like this, because his body's like almost irrelevant, and 3 mana's a lot to keep up during your opponent's turn. I mean, if they know that if they can see that you have this effect and that combat would be adverse to them, they're just not going to attack or, play into this. So you've held up 3 mana for nothing. I don't like this card. I think it's just going to be one of those unplayable uncommons. Moving on. So tap, target creature you don't control. I mean, without the overload, it's pretty bad. It's like half of a twiddle. Overload, I mean, it can give you... I guess it could win you the game. Tap their guys, they can't attack you. And then you can alpha strike into them. For those purposes, it's probably worth playing in a deck where you think, you're going to be aggressive enough to do that. Decks with a lot of evasion and stuff like that, if you've got the traditional, evasion / large ground blockers, you don't really need something like this. But I guess if you're is it with a lot of 2/2s and stuff like that, and have a tough time breaking through larger creatures, then this card's fine to play. I don't think it's amazing, but it's fine. Moving on, moving down. Chronic Flooding. Like the last Ravnica, there is a mill sub-theme. The last Ravnica, the Dimir Guild was the milling guild. If you were lucky enough to open a Glimpse the Untouchable, which was, by the way, Glimpse the Untouchable was, when it was designed, it was supposed to be a common. But they felt like just having too many of them show up in draft just completely unbalanced the format, so they took it to rare, and now it's still like a $12 rare. If you're the mill deck, even if you're the mill deck, this is pretty bad. It's kind of at best it's a Stone Rain that they can use if they really need it to. I mean, if you're not the mill deck and you're just hoping to get them by chronic flooding all of their lands, it's just not going to work, because there's no support to it, and they can eventually just wait until they have more lands while you're spending all your spells chronic flooding them. If you are a dedicated mill deck, I don't know, it's still kind of bad. There are better mill cards in this set. Cancel. I was kind of surprised Cancel wasn't reprinted in M13, and here it is. It's a spell. It's probably the best counter spell in the format for limited. Syncopate might be better in constructed. We'll see Syncopate in a minute. In limited, this is probably the best counter spell, just because for 3 mana, just counter anything, as long as you can support it with the blue. I've never been an opponent of drafting a Cancel or 2 when you really need to be the control deck, so it's there for you. This card, I mean, this is an EDH casual card. It's not very good in limited, so at the beginning of your upkeep, you get your opponent's best card, and they get Conjured Currency. So then during their upkeep, they get to trade Conjured Currency for your best card, but they can't take the card that you took from them. I don't know. It's just 6 mana for such an unpredictable effect. It's like a bad Puka's Mischief. So, I mean, people are going to play it in EDH and, giggle like idiots when they resolve it. But in Limited and Constructed, regular Constructed, nope. Crosstown Courier, this is the mill strategy guy. It's exactly what mill strategies don't want to do, have little aggressive-ish creatures that mill. Milling decks prefer to be defensive. I guess if you need a 2/1, it's better to have this than a vanilla 2/1, unless your opponent has a lot of scavenge cards, and then you might be helping them. So this is a card I generally would never want to play. I guess even if I was a dedicated mill deck, playing a 2-1 that might mill them for 2 is just not conducive to a good strategy. Mill is generally a fringe strategy regardless. I mean, in the first Ravnica was in, like, sometimes in Zendikar, depending on how many Hedron crabs you got. That's the only time I'd really considered it like a viable deck. Dispel, reprint from Zendikar. Not a lot to explain. It's a constructed card, played in combo decks, not a limited card. I would probably never put this in your deck. Cyclonic Rift. This is an interesting card. I don't know really how to value this. Is it, like, really good or incredibly good? The versatility of it is clearly the most important. Just having a Dissipate on hand. I always liked having a Dissipate anyway, when Dissipate was in the format. No, not Dissipate. Dispel. Sorry, Dispel. I always like having a Dispel on hand when it was in the format, just because it gave you a little bit of leeway into what your opponents resolved. You could always just get rid of it if it was really causing you an issue. Give yourself a temporary reprieve. And, I mean, the Overload should win you the game. So, but I mean, in decks where this is good, is the Overload going to win you the game, or is it just going to be really good? See, that's what I can't figure out. Like, is this... I don't know. Is it a huge bomb, or is it just really good? I think it's really good, but it could just turn out to be incredible. It's probably going to get played and constructed in control decks, and in limited, I mean, I would first pick it over most things. I can't think of anything that I would take over it, but then again, I don't have the pick orders in my head just for easy access yet. But it's a very strong card. I'm not going to deny that. Doorkeeper. See, this is what you want out of your mill creatures. I mean, it's a 0/4 for 2. Blocks very well. And, incidentally, you could mill them out. If you get, like, a bunch of Doorkeepers or something like that, there is a Defender Matters theme in this set, a very small one, but it is there. And if you manage to get pretty deep and draft that deck, this is a win condition. One of the Defender cards adds mana to your mana pool for the Defender creatures you have, kind of like a Overgrown Battlement. So they work in tandem to mill your opponent. But even if you're just a defensive deck, this guy's fine. I mean, I'll take a 0/4 for 2 mana if my opponent is trying to get really aggressive. It shuts down a lot of those early, the Rakdos mechanic Unleash, where guys are basically undercosted and they can't block. Like, I mean, there's a lot of, like, common 3-power creatures for, like, 2 or 3 mana that are pretty big, and this stops them very well. Downsize, not a fan of this card. It is very similar to Hysterical Blindness, which was never a real card. I mean, people are going to play this. You will probably get this played against you with the pre-release, and then you will get it played against you less and less and less until it is a last pick. Similar to Hysterical Blindness. Just cards like this tend not to work out like people want them to. Upper Barrier. This is a good card. Drift of Phantasms was very good in Ravnica block. It stopped almost everything. And this is just a bigger, non-transmutable version. But I'll take 3 mana for a 0/6 flying any day, as long as I'm not super aggressive. And I was talking about the Unleashed creatures. I mean, this shuts them all down, except for the rare ones. And it's cheap. It basically shuts down the aggressive creatures from every guild. It's a very good card. Not, like, unbelievable, but I can see weak packs where I consider first picking this. It fits into the decks that I like to draft. Drift of Phantasms was a constructed playable card because of Transmute. This will not be a constructed playable card, don't get me wrong. I just wanted to make that distinction. Fairy Imposter. So I every time I look at this card, I feel like it has Flash, but it doesn't. So you have to return another creature you control to its owner's hand. This is an upgrade of Screeching Drake, which is the same thing for Mirage, except it's a 1/1 flyer for 1. I mean, the best use of this card is obviously to rebuy things with come into play effects. A 2/1 flyer with a drawback is like alright, but if you're just rebuying like a 4-drop, like an Aquos Steed, if you're playing that for whatever reason, then it's way too overcosted. This is going to be like, what's the Drake Familiar from the other Ravnica? That was 1 more mana, was a 2/1 flying, and you bounced an enchantment when it came back, when it came into play, but Ravnica had all these enchantments with come into play effects, so you could take advantage of the Drake Familiar. This is going to be like that, except for creatures. In action Injunction, I mean, this card's like alright. It's kind of like a bad chill to the bone, or crippling chill. It's a sorcery. The thing about Detain is that it's only until your next turn. So, I mean, any Detain effects are obviously going to be having to be played at during your turn. It's not like you can end a turn, detain their guy at the end of their turn, and it lasts for a while. That doesn't work that way. I mean, this is just pacifism for a turn, basically, and you draw a card. You know, it's worse than Crippling Chill. It's going to be playable. I mean, you're building your deck, and you got your 20th, 21st card. You'll look at your pile and be like, I guess I can play this. But it's nothing amazing. Inspiration. Been a while since this one's been around. Divination sometimes gets played in Standard. And this is... Well, counterspells are so weak right now that it might not be worth the extra mana just to play it at instant speed. But then again, being able to keep mana open is always super important. And with Divination, it generally doesn't matter if it's 3 or 4 mana, as long as you have control of the game. So this one might get played in Constructed. In Limited, I like it. Just drawing extra cards at the end of their turn. I imagine some of the Izzet decks get very funky, and this will keep the funk flowing. Moving downward, Jace, the 4th version of the much maligned Planeswalker. So until your next turn, whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, it gets -1/-0. That's the +1. The -2. Reveal the top 3... I'm surprised I didn't make it 0. Reveal the top 3 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards, so it's a fact fiction for 3 cards. And then for each player, search your player's library for a non-land card and exile it. You may cast cards without paying their mana cost. So in one-on-one, non-multiplayer Magic, you get to search your library and your opponent's library for a card and play without paying its mana cost. This guy's reasonable. I don't think he's that great in Limited. He's basically like a mini Fact or Fiction / Fog. I mean, you can use the +1, but if you have no way, that's still not really protecting him that much. I mean, if your opponent has, a 3/3 and a 2/2, and you +1 Jace, he's still getting smacked for 3. And the -2, is good. You get 2 cards in your hand. You're basically showing your opponent the top 3 cards of your library and getting the worst 2 or the best 1. But you can only do that twice. Yeah, so he's definitely not overpowered. He's not even that great in Limited. I would definitely first pick him, obviously, just because he's a Planeswalker. And if you get him out and protected, he controls the board real well. I mean, he's not even close to as good in Limited as Jace Memory Adept is, but because that card is incredibly obnoxious. In Constructed, he will be playable as long as you can keep the board cleared. The thing about this is you can Jace, Fact or Fiction, then Fact or Fiction the next turn, and play another Jace. So he's just going to keep the card advantage flowing. At the worst, he's always going to draw 2 cards. So I think he'll be fine in Constructed. He's the Magic 4 casting cost, not 5. At 5, he would be completely unplayable. But I think he'll be reasonable. Spurious Skywatch. I kind of like this card, only because I'm thinking of the last Ravnica format, where a 3/3 flyer was actually like pretty big. If you've ever seen me do any old Ravnica videos, I'm always like enamored with Harrier Griffin, which is a way better version of this in white, but is a 3/3 flyer for 6 mana, and it always beats the hell out of my opponents. Like I said, it's a way better version of this. It taps a creature during your upkeep, is what it does. Like this is almost irrelevant, but I will play this card a lot just because it's big and flying. I can't get any more clearer than that. If this is anything like last Ravnica, having a 3/3 flyer is going to be very important, regardless of how much it costs. So obviously it's overcosted, but hopefully it won't matter. Hopefully for me, because I'm going to be playing these. Mizzium Skin. I don't know what this is. Target creature you control gains +1/+1 and hexproof until the end of turn. +1. And all creatures gain hexproof. Maybe. I don't know. I think it's worse. It's probably worse than what's the card that is from Zendikar? Ranger's Guile. Probably worse than Ranger's Guile, since you can actually use it to kill something offensively, although you can, your 3/3 can kill their 3/3 if you need it be, but giving +0/+1 is not that great. Giving it to all your guys is generally not very good, because it's not like your opponent's going to like target one of your guys with a removal spell, and with the removal spell on the stack, target a different guy with a removal spell. You very, very rarely have to give hexproof to more than one of your guys. So it's just a bad Ranger's Guile, and I probably won't be playing it. You never know, though. Paralyzing Grasp, reprint of Zendikar. Don't know, it's like some little goblins getting strangled by an octopus or a squid coming out of a window. Interesting. You gotta watch out for those land squids. This is, sea and crust for my review of this. I didn't mind this card in Zendikar just because blue had to be so defensive because the other colors were so fast. So, you get smacked for 2 and then by one of their many 2/1s and then just Paralyzing Grasp it and it's pretty much gone. Gets worse in a format where the creatures are bigger, because you don't want to have to get hit by a 5/5 just so you can use a removal spell. But, I mean, if you're playing against it's a good way to get rid of the undercosted Unleash guys, you know what I mean? Because, I mean, they're going to be coming at you very large and in charge, and as long as you can survive the initial rush and stabilize, I mean, sometimes you have to play cards like Paralyzing Grasp. Rune Wing, when it dies, draw a card. It's value here. 2/2 flyer. Again, I'm judging it from having played the other Ravnica, and flyers were very important, and this is just a reprint of Avon Fisher. Solid card. Gives you value if it dies. Nothing wrong with that. Psychic Spiral. Shuffle all cards from your graveyard into your library. Target player puts that many cards. So this is the type of thing that could be a win condition in a mill deck. It's an instant, too. Wow, these effects usually aren't instantaneous. So, if you have a very spell-heavy mill deck, I mean, you can get your spells back, mill your opponent for 7. I don't know how good that's going to be. It all depends on the makeup of your deck. I mean, if you're not trying to mill them out, this is a 14th pick, 15th even. You might even take the land over this. But if by the end of, pack 3 you have a very, spell-oriented, dedicated mill deck, I mean, you could try to run this. That's all I can say in that one. Search the City. When it comes into play, exile the top 5 cards of your library. If you play a card with the same name as this one, you may put one of those cards with that name into its owner's hand. And this is just a really weird card. It's unplayable and limited, obviously, and it's never going to be played in constructed Magic. Someone's going to try to make a deck out of it, but they're going to fail. It's just a really weird card. Skyland Predator. Add a add a toughness to Fairy Invaders, and add a rarity level and a blue mana cost. That's what that is, except it's going to be even more difficult to surprise people. Actually, you know what? It might actually be easier to surprise people because there's less of them. And by the time, you know, Fairy Invaders, you pass with 5 mana open and like 4 cards in your hand. Obviously, you have Fairy Invaders, but you'll be passing with 2 cards in your hand, 6 mana. Skyland Predator. They might not know you have it. They might just be like, I'm going to play around an uncommon that he probably doesn't have, and they need to ambush him with it. Reasonable card. I like it. It's better than the other 3/3 flyer for 6 that I said I would play. So there you go. Sphinx of the Chimes. Casual fodder. Not really, though, even. Bad in EDH and bad in Limited. Well, the ability. In Limited, it's, you know, first pickable because it's a giant Sphinx Dragon. And these are always good, as long as it's big. Obviously not going to be played and constructed. Soulsworn Spirit. When it comes into play, detain target creature and opponent controls. It is unblockable. I mean, I guess that's playable. Detain just seems like such a lazy ability. I don't know if I mean lazily designed. It's just so, like, temporarily, like, ugh. Like, I'm paying an extra mana or 2 just for basically nothing. I mean, there are going to be times when you get to detain a guy and, like, lets you alpha strike, and there are going to be times when you play this detain target wall that your opponent controls. Great. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what to think about the ability until I see it in practice yet. I mean, I'll probably play this. It's unblockable. Sua Secrets. Whenever it deals damage to a player, draw a card. I like this less than something like Scroll Thief, because it dies to 2/1s. I don't know how good it's going to be. Scroll Thief was very format dependent. In M11, it was actually pretty good, and in M13, it's pretty bad. So it remains to be seen. If a lot of people are playing those Rakdos cards with the Unleash mechanic and making it so they can't block, and you drop this, I mean, their guys can't block, and hopefully you can, you know, hit them, draw some cards, and be able to answer their 3/4s for 3. Syncopation. This is a reprint from Odyssey, which is uncommon for some reason. They really hate counterspells. Even the bad ones are uncommon now. I'm surprised Cancel's not rare. Exile target spell if it's countered this way. Controller pays X. It'll be played and constructed. It's limited playable too, a little bit. We need, you know, Broken Ambitions was played. It was played in 5-color decks. It was played in Fairies decks. And this is Broken Ambitions, but it can get rid of something like Gravecrawler and other flashback cards. There you go. Void Wielder. When it comes into play, you may return target creature to its owner's hand. Wow, this is the worst one of these I've ever seen. 5 mana, 1/4. I mean, yeah, it's playable, but it's just so overcosted, huh? What happened to Aether Adept? Yeah, I mean, I'll play this. It's obviously much better in defensive decks. It's just really expensive and doesn't hit for really anything. It can block. One of the worst return target creature to its owner hand cards that I've seen. Combos well with the fairy that bounces things, I suppose. Tower Drake. Tower Drake gets pumped up for this much when that happens. This is a reprint from Invasion. It's fine and limited. Much better if you're Aureus. And not playable and constructed. There you go. It's a 2/1 flyer. Because I want to cover everything this week, we will now be reviewing more cards. Artifacts! Whee! Alright. The Key Runes. Key Runes are a very poor replacement for Signets. But they didn't like Signets before. So despite how much the people liked them, there are no more Signets. There are Key Runes, which produce mana. And they come down on turn 3. And they turn into creatures. So we have Azorius Key Rune. It taps for a blue or a white. It becomes a 2/2 flying bird artifact creature with flying until the end of the turn. Probably one of the better ones just because it has evasion. They're all relatively small creatures that they turn into. But at least this can become a bird. Reasonably important color fixing. I mean, I might even have like an obelisk in this situation, as opposed to a Key Rune. But, you know, if you're like red, white, splashing blue, this becomes more important. If you're just like Aureus, then this card is... You take it because it becomes a creature, not because it ramps you from 3 to 5. They just come down a turn late to be like super great at ramping things, which is probably why they have the extra creature effect. These might see play in Constructed in like really slow controlling decks. Those decks that would have previously played Pristine Talisman now get to play this, and instead of gaining life, they get a creature. I imagine that's going to happen. I imagine this card is going to get played a lot. Lands you control have 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So yeah, this is going to enable some multicolored strategies and Constructed, absolutely. Oh, it also taps for 1 mana of any color, which is pretty sweet. In Limited, I mean, it just because you first pick this doesn't mean that you can just go nuts and draft, you know, 5 color, but it definitely helps fix your mana. It actually makes your mana perfect. Which is why it's good in Limited. I like it in Limited a lot. You never have any problem casting spells, plus it's an accelerator. In Constructed, it's going to be played too. Not as good as Coalition Relic, but, you know, helps fix your mana in the same way that Relic did, and Relic was pretty awesome in its day. It's a good card. Codex Shredder. Target player puts a top card of his or her library into his or graveyard. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand. I mean, this card is fine. In a mill strategy, this is a good card. It just comes down on turn 1, and throughout the game, it'll mill a lot of cards. I mean, you play this on turn 1, and if this format's as slow as I think it is, you will get 8 or 9 or even 10 cards out of this. And you can always just cash it in for a card from your graveyard. This is a little too expensive for an effect if you're not trying to really mill someone. I guess you could mill yourself and then get a card back, but that seems like that's a lot of dirtling. That's so much dirtling. But if you're able to get multiple of these, it's a pretty strong effect, especially since if you no longer need it, you can cash it in for something you already used. It's not a card you're going to pick early, but there'll definitely be times when you're like, you see it like pick 3, pack 3, and be like, wow, this card's perfect for my deck, and snatch it up. Sivak Saber ranges from bad to very good. It's very cheap. So if you have a 2-color creature, it is Bone Splitter. And Bone Splitter was a good card, especially if your creature has evasion. If you do not have a 2-color creature, it is +0/+1. It is a bad Bone Saw, and Bone Saw was not good. So, I mean, it really depends on how many creatures you have that are multicolored, and how aggressive you are. I mean, I guess even a defensive creature, if you have like a couple defensive creatures that are 2-colored, if there are any, you could slap this on one of them and make them tougher for your opponent to attack into. But I wouldn't really recommend that. This is way more of an aggressive card. What you're looking for is multiple colors and evasion, and then it's playable. I mean, if you've got a bunch of mono blue flyers, this isn't that great. Cogar Kyran becomes an insect with Death Touch. I guess, I mean, it lets you trade your Key Rune for an attacking creature, or, swing into them and they get to trade their 2-power creature for your Key Rune. I don't know if it'll be played in Constructed. Black-green decks are probably, from what I've been hearing, seem like they're going to be very zombie-based. This might be good in block, but then again, I don't know anything about how block's going to turn out. So I doubt this will be a player in Constructed just because of the whole zombie thing. This doesn't really fit well into that theme. In Limited, it's the same as the other Key Runes. Worse than the Aureus one because it doesn't have evasion. Moving on, is it Key Rune? This is the worst creature of the 3 just because it has no evasion. It's just a 2/1. I mean, on an empty board, it's alright, but it's not even like it draws you a card. Well, until it gives you card advantage, you still have to discard a card. And in Limited, it's probably going to be tough to get your 2/1 through. Might be played in Constructed. Definitely worse Constructed option than the Aureus one, but blue-red is probably going to be played. I mean, it's got some powerful cards. Blue, red, white seems like a deck that's going to be played and constructed. There's, you know, you got the miracles. You got the 3 mythic miracles in blue, red, white. You got a bunch of other powerful cards. So this could help ramp that strategy and I guess give you a little, I guess, pseudo win condition if need be. Rakdos Key Rune, 3/1 black and red devil artifact creature with first strike. Probably the second best so far to the aureus one. First strike is obviously quite good. It dodges all the sorcery speed removal that you know, might be thrown at it if there is any in this set. I can't even think off the top of my head what there would be. Again, not going to be played and constructed, probably. There's just too much aggression in the black-red guild in this set to want a mana accelerator on turn 3 as opposed to, like, a creature that does stuff. Pithing Needle. We know what this does. It is no longer a $20 card like it was when it was first printed. But it's an option. It's nice to have an option for Pithing Needle, although Trinket Mage is no longer in the format. Selesnya Key Rune becomes a white wolf, green and white wolf. This is the biggest, I guess. This thing can bash. I don't think it's going to be constructed, just because green-white decks usually want their mana acceleration from things like Absence Pilgrim and Birds of Paradise. Birds of Paradise isn't in Standard now, is it? No. Huh. As far as I know. And anyway, mana acceleration, creatures, Absence Pilgrim, Arbor Elf, not 3 mana cost, wolf sticks. But they in limited, this is a thing. It is definitely, it beats for 3, so it's reasonable. Maybe the second best. When it just attacks, destroy all auras attached to target land. Talk about a niche card. there are auras that can be put on lands in this format. Not a ton of them. Not a lot of them are very good. There's a black one that's very good. This is, I probably wouldn't start this unless you like really wanted Obsidious Golem. Obsidious Golem. The card. The Golem card. The foot bones connected to the ankle stone. That guy. Anyway, yeah. If you're getting like totally savaged by enchant lands, side them in, I guess. Volatile Rig. This is a weird card. Trample. Attacks each turn if able. It's 4/4 trample for 4. Meh. Vintage playable. When Volatile Rig is dealt damage, flip a coin. If you lose the flip, sacrifice Volatile Rig. When it dies, flip a coin. You lose the flip. It deals 4 damage to each creature and each player. So you play a 4/4 in turn 4 that has to attack. So it attacks. The chump block take a couple trample damage. You flip a coin and lose it. You sacrifice Volatile Rig. You flip a coin again and win it. Nothing happens. Pretty volatile. It might be playable. Coin flip cards are obviously unpredictable. It depends on how badly you want to take the chance of dealing 4 damage to everything, and you know how badly you want to take the chance of sacrificing your guy when it's dealt damage. It's a weird card. I mean, it's literally impossible to predict. The only thing you can predict safely is that it is a 4/4 for 4 with trample that attacks every turn. This stuff is completely up to chance. Choose 2 colors. Whenever they cast a spell, if at least one of the chosen colors. Life gain card. I would never play this. It's just like the worst top deck ever. It's only when you cast a spell too. So, bleh. That's it actually. I don't know why I was going down. That's it for artifacts and blue cards. Tomorrow will be something else. I think Friday's going to be all multicolored, so I'm going to have to cover red, green, and black over the next 2 days. So yeah, exciting stuff, guys. Thank you for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.